You're listening to the Renegade Blitz, the best podcast for Steelers fans by Steelers fans. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, at RBlitzPod, and at Blitz Videos. Read articles on RenegadeBlitz.com, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app.
And welcome back to the Renegade Blitz podcast. I'm Ty Polk with Brandon Walker and Chris Ward. Happy holidays to you. Glad to be here with you for an important AFC matchup for the Pittsburgh Steelers as they'll head to Arrowhead Stadium to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. And we're glad to have on Matt Lane of the Kansas City Sports Network on to talk to us about these Chiefs. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, I appreciate you guys asking me, so thanks for having me on. I'm excited to do this. This, hopefully is a lot more fun of a game than it has been a week leading up to it so far.
The COVID-19 situation is ever-changing, and right now the Chiefs, well, after that loss to Tennessee, they've been absolutely perfect. 10-4, top of the AFC, have won 7 straight games, and are averaging 30.8 points per game in the past 5. They are dealing with the COVID situation, as we mentioned, and 2 big names, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, are currently on the COVID list. So, Matt, are there any plans for those guys to be off the COVID list in time of Sunday? What's the situation there?
So I think the hope for all Chiefs fans is that they will be. So today it was announced that cornerback Charvarius Ward was activated off of the COVID list, and he actually went on the same day as Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. So it's only been 3 days since he tested positive. With the new NFL protocols, he's already able to come off of it. Reports or rumors are that Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, and the majority of the Chiefs players on it are asymptomatic. So the belief is that they will be able to come back at some point in time. Before that point, it's just a matter of kind of sweating it out until then. And then if they can't, that's where things get a little dicey. So we're just crossing our fingers right now on my end that they're going to be there.
In general, how has this Chiefs offense evolved? When you think of it, the previous couple of years, it was the fun and gun offense. Really, they would just be almost microwave-like with their offense, flashy. But now it's a little bit more subdued. It's more of a league average in terms of how they move the ball offense. It's more short plays because defenses are covering over the top, trying to eliminate those big plays like the famous jet chip loss in Super Bowl 54. Just what has made this offense more dangerous than ever in ways?
Well, so that's the kind of the interesting part from the Chiefs' perspective here is this offense, despite over, this win streak, the team is averaging 30-ish points. A lot of that is coming in 2 games against the Raiders, and then everything else until this past week had been relatively low. The offense hadn't scored over 20 points since like October or something like that in a game. So the offense had really been struggling, and then they kind of got lucky that Gus Bradley and the Raiders gave them different looks. They were able to carry some of that momentum to this Chargers game. So the big thing is teams just keep taking away the big play, and the Chiefs really had a hard time kind of nickel and diming their way down the field. They've struggled to play the small ball game, keep throwing short, throwing quick, and just keep moving the sticks. It looked like they finally got something going last week versus the Chargers in the second half, so we'll have to see how that goes. But for most of the year, they've struggled to find a rhythm on anything that kind of hasn't been a big broken play, and most of those were at the beginning of the season.
And Matt, Mahomes has a 30-13 touchdown interception ratio this season, has a quarterback rating of 95.8, which is below his career average of 105.5. Mahomes started the season off slow and was struggling with in regards to interceptions, but he's obviously still one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And so I was wondering, during this 7-game winning streak, how has he improved overall, and how's the offense improved since they started off slow?
The biggest change has been the guys have just kind of reduced their mistakes. Like Patrick Mahomes definitely is on pace. I mean, he's already set his career high in interceptions this year. But if I remember right, 6 of them have come off of hitting his own wide receivers first. So 6 of these 13 interceptions have been drops or at least just ricocheted by his own receiver. And then that kind of interception luck that he's had throughout his career reverted the other way early this season. And then the other thing is teams had been playing so much too high safety looks against the Chiefs, whether they wanted to play cover 2 or spin down and just show 2 safeties pre-snap, spin into a single high look. It really took the Chiefs by surprise. And it took them until about week 10 to really start coming up with some counters to those too high looks. But they've gotten there. They're going heavier personnel, running a lot more crossing routes, just kind of West Coast offense principles. And they're starting each game like that to try to pull defenses out of those too high looks that were giving them so much trouble throughout the beginning of the season.
Well, that's working because you have a former first-round pick, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's leading the team with 409 yards rushing. He missed a few games. He was on IR for a little while. I know because I have him on my fantasy team. And you got Daryl Williams with second with 398 yards rushing. And you got Derek Gore, the running back, who had a couple of nice games earlier in the year when he was out. Nice little staple running backs. With the Steelers having a 31st ranked run defense, how do you think they're going to establish the run against the Steelers? Do you think it's going to be a run, more of a run-heavy game for them by their standards?
It's so hard because you would have thought the same thing would happen last week when the Chiefs played the Chargers, who also had one of the league's kind of worst rushing defenses, and they really struggled to get anything going on the ground after the first drive of the game. So it really depends on what script Andy Reid's going to bring. I really don't ever see Andy coming out with too run heavy of an offense, and especially because they run so many RPOs instead of true running plays, it's really hard to get much more than a 65-35 kind of split out of the Chiefs in terms of run pass until the game's out of hand. The one big thing I will say is the Chiefs' new offensive line, they're really good when they kind of go with some gap run schemes. So when they want to run power or they want to get a fullback or two tight ends in there and run at you, they're really good. It blocks up really well. When they kind of revert to the outside zone stuff and even some of their inside or split zone runs, that's where teams have a lot of success stopping them for negative plays. So it really depends on, are you going to get one of those game plans where the Chiefs decide to play the smash mouth run game, or are they trying to do everything based on their RPOs? Because they've had some games where they had zero success running. They've had other games where it's looked pretty good. It all depends on kind of their game plan leading up to it.
Okay, so why do you think that it's been like 3-4 years now? How come it's so hard to stop that Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce high-low combination? How do you think the league has not caught up to it? And how do you think that's going to match up like later on in the year? Why do you think that,
No, that's the Chiefs' bread and butter. They get Tyreek Hill kind of running that deep over route, or sometimes it'll be like a middle read, and they put Travis Kelce. This year it's been a lot of option routes. So what they do is they give Travis Kelce kind of the freedom. He can run up, and once he reads the coverage, he can break in, out, or stop. That's where he really excels for zone. You stretch the defense with Tyreek Hill, and if anybody else, takes their eyes off Hill to look at Kelce, all of a sudden no one's keeping up with Tyreek Hill. So it's really hard to defend unless what teams are doing this year, they've decided to just double team both those guys frequently. And this is something the Patriots did going back to 2018, 2019. Every team's kind of starting to do that now, though. And since the Chiefs have lost Sammy Watkins, they've had trouble creating offense when you take away Travis Kelce, when you take away Tyreek Hill. So if a defense is willing to dedicate that many defenders to just those two receivers, they've had success slowing them down and then stopping the other guys around the Chiefs' offense. It's just all it takes is just a tiny bit of space, as we've seen time and time again, for Hill or Kelce to turn a small play into a huge one.
And Matt, how have the rest of the Chiefs wide receivers like Mecole Hardman, Byron Pringle, and Josh Gordon, how have they been doing in the offense?
It's a lot of hit or miss. I think Byron Pringle's the guy whose snaps have been steadily increasing. He seems to be getting kind of more on the same page with Patrick Mahomes compared to other guys or where he's been at before. So I'd say Byron Pringle's kind of been the next guy up. But Mecole Hardman still has, almost Tyreek Hill speed. So he's still incredibly dangerous. But his snap counts have just kind of been dipping lower and lower this year. If Tyreek Hill doesn't play, Mecole Hardman's the guy to keep your eyes on. That's where he's always been the most effective, is if Tyreek Hill's not in the game. But when Tyreek Hill's in the game, the Chiefs have had a hard time finding out how to use both guys at the same time because Mecole Hardman's skill set's so limited. And then outside of Pringle and Hardman, Josh Gordon finally got into the end zone the other week, but it's been a slow process getting him back in. He's not the same guy that everybody remembers. Everybody wants to rely on that 2014 season where he was exceptional. He's just not that guy anymore. So it's just kind of been a slow integration for him. The Chiefs try to use him as a big-bodied receiver, but that's just not how Andy Reid's offense really works. So it's hard to get him in the right spots a lot of times.
And now let's talk about the offensive line. It was one of the big reasons why that bid for back-to-back championships fell short. Gone are right tackle Mitchell Schwartz and really the linchpin towards the advancement of the Chiefs. And first overall pick, Eric Fisher. And they brought in guys like Joe Tunney, Kyle Long, the trade of Orlando Brown, and drafting Creed Humphrey. You mentioned a little bit of those gap schemes and stuff like that. It's kind of difficult to be around the offensive line of Patrick Mahomes because when I mentioned jet chip loss, and if people watch back on that, a lot of what helped him in that situation was how far back Patrick Mahomes dropped in terms of whenever he has the ball with it. It helped with Nick Bosa not getting to him in that situation. Just talk about like how the offensive line kind of adjusts to Patrick Mahomes' drops.
I think that was a big thing that really kind of plagued them early in the year was you bring in two new offensive tackles. And so Orlando Brown Jr., and you guys are familiar with playing him, not the most nimble-footed offensive tackle in the league. He's got great length, but he's not a guy that's really going to be blocking 10, 12 yards deep around the pocket. Across from him, the Chiefs had Lucas Niang, who was in a similar boat, a little bit bigger, a little bit more stout, but doesn't really have the speed of a Mitchell Schwartz or Eric Fisher up the arc. So you had this issue early in the year where Mahomes was still getting too deep in the pocket. Guys were getting a ton of pressure on that. Tennessee Titans game in particular is a big one where you just saw player after player was just going deep around the outside of these tackles, coming up on Mahomes because he was too deep. So they've gotten better. They're more cohesive now. They're on the same page, but it really is difficult. He's probably the hardest quarterback in the NFL, the hardest good quarterback in the NFL to play offensive tackle for because your pocket extends so deep. When he does decide to run, sometimes you're going to be blocking for 3+ seconds because he's not just going to throw the ball away or check it down. So, I mean, kudos to those guys for trying their hardest. It's interesting to see how this plays out, though. I don't know if that's the best offensive tackle and, like, offensive scheme pairing that you could come up with.
And Matt, how's Creed Humphrey been doing? Because that was a guy a lot of Steelers fans, and I was keeping an eye on because the Steelers, they needed the center in the draft, and the Chiefs ended up taking him in the second round, and he's been graded the number one center by Pro Football Focus, and a lot of good things have been said about him.
He's honestly been great. Like I didn't dislike Creed Humphrey as a draft prospect, but he wasn't my favorite guy. I thought there were some issues, especially watching him down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, where I didn't know if he would hold up to NFL power all the time. And there's been some issues with that. Like if you get a strong nose tackle lined up, head up on him, he can give up a lot of ground. That has been where he's lost most of his reps. But they're just so few and far between. I mean, he's been everything you could ask for out of a rookie offensive lineman. He's been one of the better centers, in the NFL this season. He's so consistent. Doesn't really have too many bad reps or bad games. Like his running mate, the other rookie, Trey Smith, out of Tennessee, right guard, he's dominant. Like there will be reps where he will put multiple guys into the ground. You will see those flashes where you think this is like one of the best players in the NFL, but he's a lot more inconsistent. He'll throw some big hands and miss and end up on the ground. He will get beat more frequently. So they're kind of a fun pairing together of consistency without the top end plays, and then a guy that's just going to give you the highest of highs and give you some more moderate lows between the two of them on the interior.
All right, let's move to the defensive side of the ball. The Chiefs ranked 24th in total defense, allowing 366.5 yards per game. However, the points per game is 21, which is 8th in NFL. And a lot of that is helped by their turnovers, which is forcing 25 this season, the 5th highest total in NFL. And then now they just have 24 sacks on the year, which is 5th worst in the league. Why has the Chiefs struggled to stop the run and get after the quarterback? Is it the scheme? Is it a bend that don't break? Is that by design or anything like that?
The Chiefs' defense has kind of been a tale of two halves, but for the whole season. So starting the year, hands down, one of the worst defenses that you've ever seen. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't rush the passer. Like they couldn't do anything, cover anybody. They couldn't do anything right. And then kind of similar to everything else. After that Titans game, everything just flipped on its axis. They hadn't allowed until this past week's Charger game, they hadn't allowed a team to score over 17 points since all of November and through up December until that point in time. So the defense is really turning it on. The big key there, I think, is they got Chris Jones moved from defensive end back inside the defensive tackle. Trading for Melvin Ingram has helped us with that. Like letting him come in and play defensive end has helped move Chris Jones back inside. So defensive line's playing a lot better, and that's kind of allowed the rest of the team to fall into place and where they've been. I'm not sure where the pass rush is going to come back now because you've had really high highs for the past month and a half. Is it going to even out to somewhere between what it was in September and November, or is it going to be closer to one or the other? I don't know. We'll see how it goes, but I will say they have been playing a lot better, kind of like I said, as the season's gone along. So that's the good news for us Chiefs fans, is that this defense really has played great over these past couple months.
Yeah, let's talk about that move for Melvin Ingram began the season as a Steeler. And I personally, during that first game against Buffalo, where he's in the 3-4 as an outside linebacker, I sung his praises. I've never seen any linebacker have that deep a bag in terms of tricks out there, and I thought that was going to be something that would carry the Steelers all season. But then, of course, he wasn't exactly happy with his role. Alex Highsmith showed himself to be a little bit more than what was expected. Like, we knew he was going to take a jump, but we didn't think it was going to be a jump this soon, especially after he came back from injury. So just talk about Ingram. Like, he's now playing a 4-3 defensive end for the Chiefs, and it was reported that he's been playing angry and brought swagger back to a defense in the Chiefs that, well, when you have a honey badger back there, there's swagger abundant.
Yeah, like I said, it's been massive for the Chiefs. I know the raw production stats for Ingram, even in Kansas City, haven't been great, but just from watching them before him and then after him, there really is a big difference. I think that switch, like you guys talked about, moving from kind of that stand-up 3-4 outside backer to now his hands in the dirt, his role's going to be, it's a little bit more limited with the Chiefs than what he was being asked to do for Pittsburgh, and that just kind of makes sense with the scheme. So now he's just getting to attack the tackle, play after play after play, and it really has helped the Chiefs. It's given them a third rusher along with Chris Jones and Frank Clark. So that's freed up Jones a little bit more. It's freed up Frank Clark. It's allowed Jared Reed on the interior to kind of get going. So he's just occupying blockers so much better than an Alex Okafor or Mike Dana were doing before him. And one of the craziest parts, this guy took me by surprise. I've seen Melvin Ingram play a ton against the Chiefs over the years when he's with the Chargers. He's been one of the best run defenders along the Chiefs defensive line. And just not kind of been my memory of him is watching him play against the run. It's been as a pass rusher terrorizing Eric Fisher over the years. But for the Chiefs right now, he's been great versus the run, penetrating, slashing into these gaps for this attacking defensive front. And then the biggest move is it's just Chris Jones doesn't play defensive end anymore. I thought he could do it. I thought he had the athletic profile that could slide outside and still be effective as kind of an outside-inside guy, but it just wasn't working. So Melvin Ingram being here has allowed Jones to just play entirely on the inside, and that's clearly where he's the best and can make his biggest impact week in and week out.
And Matt, how's the trio of Nick Bolton, Anthony Hitchens, and Willie Gay doing at inside linebacker?
If you follow Chiefs fans, it's a funny thing to watch because Chiefs fans can't stand Anthony Hitchens. They just don't like him. He's not the most athletic linebacker. It's hard to appreciate a guy that's just going to make all the calls, always be in the right spot, and kind of do the quote-unquote right thing. So you drafted Nick Bolton, who Chiefs fans love. A lot of them love because he's a local guy, went to Missouri, and he shows up, he hits guys hard and stuff like that. So a lot of Chiefs fans don't like Anthony Hitchens. They love Nick Bolton. They love the athleticism of Willie Gay. So it's really been a roller coaster. You have the two most promising guys, Gay and Bolton, are these young guys that are still learning the system. They're going to have coverage bust. They're going to take the wrong fit in the run game, but then the splash plays are there. Now, last week, Willie Gay was out, and I thought it was really clear that the Chiefs were missing his athleticism. They lost their best coverage linebacker. They lost the guy that plays kind of in the middle of the field with the most range, sideline to sideline. So he's the guy, if you want me to kind of point out one linebacker to keep an eye out for, Willie Gay's that guy. He can get caught by play action. He might guess wrong sometimes, but you can just tell he's so fast that it really does change how the rest of the defense can play. But I mean, as a Chiefs fan, I think the arrow's finally pointing the right direction. Since Derek Johnson retired, we've been chasing linebackers. That's just what the team's been doing, is chasing a linebacker. With Willie Gay and Nick Bolton, there's at least finally hope that we kind of got at least one replacement out of those two guys.
All right, can we just move to the back of the secondary? It all starts with Tyra Matthew. 2 interceptions, 11 tackles for loss. Just got presented to another Pro Bowl. What makes Tyrone such a dynamic player, and it makes up for the rest of the secondary that is, some think like Sorensen? They have a play called 3rd and Sorensen. People on ESPN say that, not me. I'm just saying. And then you got Jadarius Sneed at one corner and one of the corners, and not other known commodities on the other corner. How are they going to cover a guy like Deontay Johnson?
All right, so starting with Tyra Matthew, he plays everywhere. I think the biggest thing with him right now is he's so happy playing for Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator, because those two kind of get together and they've created this defense where he can move around. He can line up deep, but then end up dropping into the hole or sliding down into the slot, blitz. He can be anywhere on the field on any given play. And then the Chiefs have fully embraced that. They'll rotate guys from the slot to playing a deep zone and then take the guy out of the deep zone and he'll go cover the hook on the opposite side of the field. Like, they'll rotate these guys around everywhere on the field. And I think Tyrann Mathieu loves that because he thrives in the chaos. He's so football smart, he can see kind of routes as they're developing, read where the quarterback's going. And if he's allowed to just kind of freelance and roam around the middle of the field, more than likely than not, he's going to guess right and end up being able to make a big play. So I think that's where he starts with it all. Then the next big thing is covering Deontay Johnson or Chase Claypool or whoever it's going to be. The Chiefs don't have a lockdown corner. Like, they really don't. Their best cover guy is L'Jarius Sneed, and he plays predominantly out of the slot. I mean, if they're in base, he will play outside, but he's their primary slot cornerback. He's coming back this week, it sounds like, after missing 2 games with some personal family issues, and he's their best cover guy. He's really fast. He's really athletic, but quicker, really good route running slot receivers have beaten him in the past, but he's just so physical and has that makeup speed that he's willing to throw hands at the line of scrimmage. He gets involved in the run game. He'll tackle after the catch. That's where it kind of starts for usually covering, a team's better receivers is L'Jarius Sneed. And then on the other side, Charvarius Ward's a big physical corner. He will draw a lot of defensive pass interferences if you keep challenging him. Like, I'm dreading the matchup with Chase Claypool. I'm telling you guys right now, if there's not at least 2 deep defensive pass interferences on Charvarius Ward trying to guard Chase Claypool downfield, I think the Steelers have done something wrong. They should just throw these go balls over there and see what happens, because his ball skills haven't been great. He has a knack for grabbing onto guys. So I do think that's the biggest mismatch for the Steelers' way on offense, is those receivers are a rough matchup for how the Chiefs corners usually like to play.
And Matt, do you think they'll double team Deontay Johnson? Because the Steelers saw that last week with the Titans. They had Bayard playing a lot over there at free safety. He was, they were double team because Johnson has really come on this season and really, over the last couple of games.
Yeah, they'll mix in, especially on third down, they'll mix in a lot of bracket coverage where Sorensen or Tyrann Mathieu will kind of roll down and they'll play, inside leverage on the slot and have L'Jarius Sneed outside and just kind of try to squeeze, especially in the slot receiver down. They don't double too much on the outside unless we're just, having a safety over the top to prevent a deep ball. And I don't know if they're doing that as much this year, but they will bracket a slot receiver, inside, outside. And then they like to have it be Matthew because he can read the play. So he can come off that if he needs to, if he feels like it. So that's something to look out for on third down. When we talked about the Super Bowl earlier with Jet Chip Wasp, they were doing that all game long to George Kittle. They hit him with nonstop brackets on third down, inside, outside. They were just daring the 49ers to try to squeeze it in there. So that is something definitely in the playbook. If Johnson starts to really beat him up, I do imagine you start seeing that come out at least in the second half.
All right, so we're now towards the end here. So I want to get your take. We know a lot about the big horses for the Chiefs because they've been so successful over the last few years. So who do you think will have a big game for the Chiefs? Who's an X factor that maybe most Steelers fans and fans in the know might not know about, who might make an impact on this game? And what's your biggest concern for the Chiefs?
So offensively, I think a guy to kind of keep the eye out for is going to be Daryl Williams, the backup running back for the Chiefs. And the biggest reason is I don't know for sure if Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill are going to play. And that's Patrick Mahomes' safety blankets, those 2 guys. So if one or both of them are out, kind of who's going to be the next guy that's going to get all of the targets, all of the looks when a play starts to break down or what they're trying to get's not there. I think Daryl Williams, the next guy in line, he's kind of got this connection with Mahomes. He's made some plays downfield, which have been pretty crazy for a running back as a receiver. He does a really good job in the flat, just being open and picking up the right guy in pass protection. So So I'd say Daryl Williams there, and I kind of talked about him a little bit earlier, but Willie Gay, I don't think he's a great linebacker right now, but I think he's really good and on his way, and he just means so much to that defense with his ability to get sideline to sideline, his ability in coverage. You're going to try to sling in slants or shallow digs or crossers over his head. He's already got 2 interceptions, dropped 2 more on those exact kind of plays this year in coverage. So he's really good as a coverage linebacker right now. And then concerning, there's vertical shots. I don't know if the Steelers are going to beat them a ton vertically. I think that you guys have been a pretty good vertically passing offense. Ben Roethlisberger still gets pick, but he finds a good matchup. He throws a very catchable ball down the field. So I do think there's a good chance those Chiefs outside corners probably do give up 1 or 2 of those, maybe pick up another defensive pass interference if the Steelers kind of stay true to trying that type of offense and don't try just to pound the rock and throw a ball short over and over again. I think that's what the Chiefs would like them to do and not challenge them vertically.
And Matt, did you have a prediction for the game?
So, like we've been saying, it's so hard with not knowing who's going to play. I think as of right now, if Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill don't play, so if those 2 are both out, I think it's going to be kind of difficult for the Chiefs to score a lot of points on the Steelers' defense. Andy Reid having the extra time, though, kind of that miniature bye week before this, those guys going on the COVID protocol early in the week, I do think gives him enough time to manufacture enough of an offense that they can put up enough points to be competitive. So if that's the case, I'll say the Chiefs 17-13 in kind of this defensive battle that's not really par for the course for Chiefs fans over the recent years, but that defense is playing really good right now. And if they have to win those close games, they've been doing it since, the clock turned to November.
All right, Matt. I think you like their chances to win the AFC. I think they're the top seed. They're going to wind up with the top seed. But it seems like nobody wants to take over that top spot. It was like 1 week it's New England, 1 week it's Baltimore, 1 week it's Kansas City, 1 week here comes Buffalo. Why do you think there's so much parity and mediocrity in the entire NFL? But we're going to talk about the AFC because this is the AFC matchup. What do you think is the product of the mediocrity? So we talked to other guys around here and saying, is it COVID? Is it the 17-game season? What do you think it is? Why there's so much parity, mediocrity, things of that nature?
Yeah, it's a really weird year. So many offenses, there's so many teams that entered this year with really good offenses that they were going to rely on all year have been kind of middling or have just been good and not great. Include the Chiefs, the Bills kind of into that category. These are offenses that, are known for airing it out, putting up a lot of points. I think that were most people's, top 2 favorite teams coming into this year in the AFC, and both offenses have struggled a lot throughout this year. You pair that with, the litany of injuries for teams like the Ravens and other teams throughout the AFC. And it seems like a very unlucky year that's been super unpredictable for the AFC side of it. I do think a big thing, though, is all these defenses are kind of catching up to the spread game that's been taking over the NFL for the last couple of years. You see all these 2 high shells, Brandon Staley, Vic Fangio, this defensive style that's kind of catching on everywhere right now. The safeties, they're playing pass first, run second. I think that's becoming more predominant, and that's throwing some of these passing teams, some of these high-octane offenses a little bit through a loop. You look at the teams that have really good offenses this year. You might even have to jump the NFC for some of those, but they have the ability to run the ball, or they don't win it just by spreading it out and throwing the ball vertically. It's, the Green Bay Packers will gladly run the ball at you every time. Same with the Cowboys. You get the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they're healthy. They'll go heavy personnel and run or pass out of it. In the AFC, it just seems like so many more teams want to spread it out, and I think defenses are slowly catching on how to stop that.
Do you think there's a team that could present a challenge to Kansas City in the playoffs?
I straight up don't want to play the Chargers again. As a fan, they beat us once this year. We took them to overtime this last time. And I know there was guys on both sides that were out, but it's just the biggest fear for me right now. I'm still a Chiefs fan. I still think Patrick Mahomes is one of, if not the best quarterback in the league. Anytime you can put a quarterback across from him that's playing at that same level, that's equally as talented, that's the scariest part. And I think Herbert's kind of that guy right now. So I don't want to see the Chargers again if I can avoid them. And then, I think that's the biggest one. The rest of the AFC, like you guys just said, is everybody's okay. And when everyone's just okay and all things are even, I trust Mahomes to go out and be a little bit better than the opponent. Besides, like I said, Herbert's the one that scares me the most right now.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about your board right behind you. I noticed a 7-buster right there. Is that, do you typically like chart a lot of like what Kansas City likes to do?
So yeah, this was actually just this is one of our play calls here that was at the end of the Chargers-Chiefs game, and it was just an incompletion. And so I was just kind of going through a film room for some of the people that kind of subscribe to the KC Sports Network and just showing them what was happening on the coverage. And so like I mentioned it earlier, just how the Chiefs rotate guys around all the time. You'll see all my dotted lines. All three of these players here, as soon as the ball was snapped, just rotated clockwise and just changed positions right as the ball was snapped. And I was just talking about like why Steve Spagnuolo is so much fun and does all this crazy stuff, because you have things like that are happening in the middle of a split field coverage look like that. So it was just something I like to do for some of the guys that support us over at the KC Sports Network and try to break down some of the film and stuff that I can see for them.
All right, well,
okay.
I'll let you go. I'll let you guys go first before I ask.
Let me get one question in, because I want to talk about this. There's a guy, offensive on your staff, who's been going after head coaching jobs for the past 2 years, and he hasn't gotten a sniff. Why do you think Eric Bieniemy has not gotten a sniff? Is it because I don't think it's? We're not going to take the one of the factors out. Do you think it's because of Andy Reid? It's more Andy Reid's type offense? What I'm basically trying to ask is, what role does he really have? Does he have on the offense, Eric Bieniemy?
So that it's hard because Matt Nagy, Doug Peterson, I mean, Andy Reid's coaching tree is huge with various levels of success. Some guys have gone on to win Super Bowls. Other guys have been head coaches for a long time. So I don't think it's anything to do specifically with being part of Andy Reid's coaching tree. But I do think, kind of like you're saying, I don't think everyone's sure what his role is. They've cycled in 2 straight offensive coordinators into head coaching jobs. Doug Peterson's already out. Matt Nagy looks like he's on his way out now. So was Eric Bieniemy behind them and that lineup for a specific reason? Is there hesitancy about that? I've heard some rumblings that he doesn't interview great when he goes into them. There's just been some rumors, probably not as public, that he hasn't had the best interviews. So I think that's played a role. So it's going to be real interesting this offseason, because I believe his contract is up. The Chiefs have a quarterbacks coach in Mike Kafka, who they really like, who's kind of a hot name coming up. It's going to be interesting to see how they're able to keep both of them if Bieniemy does not get hired off for a head coaching job soon, just what that process is going to play out like, because I really think they might choose to keep Mike Kafka over Eric Bieniemy at this point in time, just the way, reading the tea leaves coming out from the team.
And I just have 2 quick questions. Matt, what is the game day atmosphere there at Arrowhead Stadium? Because it's like one of the loudest in the league. So I was just, what is it like there being at a game at Arrowhead, and how is it? It's very tough for visit. It might be the toughest place for visiting teams to play in the league.
Yeah, no, it's a blast as a Chiefs fan. And I think as a rival fan, it really depends on what kind of attitude you go into it with. Like if you're going to take, being ribbed a little bit and jabbed at throughout the game in good fun, like personally, then it probably really stinks to go if you were going to be like an opposing fan. But if you go in with good spirits, usually Chiefs fans are pretty nice. They'll invite you into their tailgates out in the parking lot of Arrowhead if you want to go tailgate. They'll share food with you. Just, there might be some jokes that go back and forth, but it's going to get loud. There's going to be a lot of people in there yelling. It's not as cold as it is in Pittsburgh, but it gets cold enough that it's a fun winter football atmosphere too when you're going to play a game, at Christmas time essentially. So if you ever get a chance to go to a game at Arrowhead, I do highly recommend it. There's something about having an outdoor stadium that gets that loud that's just you can't match in most other places. It's really different when you don't have that dome, but it still gets rocking as loud as it does, especially right now when the team's going good. It's a lot of fun right now, and I couldn't recommend it enough to anybody that's passing through.
And then
you said it doesn't get as cold in Kansas City. I thought otherwise, because I heard it gets real bad.
Oh, no, it gets cold. Don't get me wrong. I moved to North Carolina because I wanted to get away from it. So don't take me wrong. I don't think it gets quite as cold there as it does back in Pittsburgh. But so I always got to be careful because now that I'm in Carolina, I've met people who have lived here their whole life and they think 50 degrees is cold. I'm like, nah, you guys haven't known it. So I don't want to do the same thing and tell you that 20 degrees in Kansas City is cold if you're used to 10 degrees or whatever it might be.
And then last one, just tell us a little bit more about the KC Sports Network and how that all started. And do you guys cover other things other than the Chiefs?
KC Sports Network, it started with a group of us that have all kind of covered the Chiefs through various different avenues over the past decade now for different websites. BJ Kissel, who's kind of the founder of the whole thing, was the Chiefs sideline reporter for a couple years. And we just kind of got together one time and just said, hey, everybody's kind of starting to do this now. We think, we like doing this. We want to work and do cool stuff with our friends. So can we find a way to do this, ourselves? And so we kind of came up with a plan. And so essentially we just created a podcast network in which it operates as an online radio service. So every day we have a new podcast coming out that covers specifically the Chiefs 5 days a week, post-game stuff with live shows and things like that. We've expanded out. We're now covering local college sports. So like KU and Missouri basketball, K-State football, Missouri football. We're trying to work slowly into some other realms of local sports. We might start branching over. We just started 8 months ago, so we're pretty new, but we've had a lot of fun with it. And then we all still like to write. So, we created a Substack. It's kcsn.substack.com. And we have, people that have been following us for years that wanted to support us. So we try to bring stuff, like this whiteboard and everything behind it. We try to bring stuff that people might find interesting and just share the limited knowledge we have of football with everybody else, cause discussion, create a community for Chiefs fans that might not have somewhere else to find it, especially kind of in the time of COVID right now where you can't get out as much.
And Matt, this is kind of like a two-parter question. With St. Louis leaving the NFL due to the team moving to Los Angeles, they were, before the Chiefs, the last team from Missouri to win the championship. Like, have Rams fans from St. Louis basically just said, all right, I guess we're Chiefs fans now?
There's been a lot of that. Yeah, I think, I'm not as in touch with St. Louis as much as I am Kansas City, but I feel like there was I don't want to say 50-50 split, but a pretty decent split that was skewed towards the Chiefs that kind of became Chiefs fans. Then the remaining split between the Bears and just being LA Rams fans after that. But there was a lot of Rams fans that came to be Chiefs fans. It's odd. I don't think there was ever much of a rivalry between Rams and Chiefs fans or the Rams and Chiefs when it comes to football. It just was never a big thing. Now, baseball, Royals and Cardinals, huge rivalry. But for some reason of football, it just never crossed or never meshed. So I think it was an easy transition for a lot of them. And then the way that team left was so ugly for St. Louis residents. They just wanted to wash their hands and get free and clear. Chiefs were coming on right then. It was very similar to the greatest show on turf, just in terms of like the vibes around the team and how it was built. So I think a lot of them came over for that reason to be Chiefs fans.
And how has this run been just to be able to watch it, be able to cover it? Because for a while, I remember back whenever I was younger in 2003, the Chiefs had that great start to the season. They were 7-0, and people were. It was the first time in my lifetime where people were going like, "Oh, this team could go undefeated." And while they ended up still with a good record, they were eliminated in their first game against the Colts. And then since then, really, it's been kind of up and down. They had Herm Edwards for a while after Dick Vermeil retired. Then, of course, it was the Todd Haley era there. And, and also now Andy Reid. But there was still obviously a little bit of early turbulence before Patrick Mahomes became Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, and so it's been wild. My entire life leading up to kind of this run right here, they've been moderately successful NFL franchise. They'd be competitive to get to the playoffs, but once they got there, it was just kind of always this, will they steal a game? Won't they steal a game? There's not really these Super Bowl hopes. Like, that's just not something that was there. Like you said, there was the Dick Vermeil, Trent Green year in 2003 where everybody was amped up. Everything was going great. You have Larry Johnson running all over everybody, and then the Colts just somehow pulled out the best run defense ever after being terrible all year, beat them in the playoffs. That kind of just squashed any hope you had in a Super Bowl. Even when getting Andy Reid, trading for Alex Smith, like that was great for the franchise. Alex Smith was so good for the franchise. He made them relevant again. He pushed them through some playoff victories. They got their first playoff win, and I forget how long with him around. So that was good, but it was clear another step was needed. And I think there's no fan base that has been so happy to trade up and draft a quarterback when you have a game-winning quarterback on your roster than Chiefs fans when they traded up to get Patrick Mahomes. And even if it didn't work out, I think fans were just happy they tried. And then now since it's worked out, it's just been, flying super high for us because it's just a team that's not used to having prolonged success during people that are, my age group or even a little bit older. we haven't known this success as our favorite team. So going into each year knowing there's a chance that they're going to win the Super Bowl, it's a great way to watch football. And I wish it for every fan out there that gets to that point at some point in time while they're rooting for a team. It's so much more fun this way. You guys most years go into each season thinking that's a possibility. And that's been the way for my entire lifetimes. Like, it's just so much more fun that way than it is the other way.
So you don't go back to the Derek Thomas, Neil Smith type days. I'm a little bit older. I know all about the old school Chiefs, Dale Carter.
I know. I remember watching them. Like, I went and saw some Chiefs. So I was born in 1990. So, like, I grew up. I watched Derek Thomas, Neil Smith. Those guys. I remember them all, but I don't know. They don't like. That's not the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of early Chiefs teams. I'm right there before the Trent Green, Dick Vermeil years. That's where I really started to understand football, and kind of that's the team that I associate with as my first Chiefs team. But I remember Derek Thomas and Andre Rison and the battle of Steve Bono and letting Rich Gannon get out the door so we could keep all these other guys. Like, I remember all that. It's just not the first thing that comes to my mind usually.
Yeah. I'm sorry. That's the first. Honestly, Derek Thomas is like one of the GOATs. He's like, you have LT and then you got Derek Thomas. I'm sorry. I'm old enough to remember watching him play, like really watching him in his prime. He was great for what I remember as a kid, but then watching highlights and stuff as I've gotten older and understand the stuff he did was absolutely unreal. And the time that he did it, I mean, the way football was played then, to still be able to put up the sack production that he did at the size that he did, it was great. I'm so sad to hear kind of what happened to him, how it went down. But it was fun I'm sure for most Chiefs fans that remember it then to have him as part of the team. I wish we got to see him, play out his career and everything would have gone differently for him. But yeah, he was great. He was great. And slowly but surely, I think the hope is kind of the Chiefs have guys on this current roster besides offensive players. The hope is a defensive player on this team kind of raises up to that Derek Thomas level of memory ingrained in Chiefs fans. He's the first defensive player everybody thinks of. Then you've got the Derek Johnsons, older guys, Dale Carter, stuff like that. You're hoping that they can win another Super Bowl, and Tyra Matthew, Chris Jones, those names get elevated to that general level just because of the team's success.
All right, so that was Matt Lane. He's from the Kansas City Sports Network. Matt, thank you for an awesome interview, and hope to have you on again.
Awesome, guys. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, hopefully we can do this again in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
Right, I think it's going to happen, Matt.
Hey, it's lining up, man. It's lining up. It's looking possible.
See, that's what we do at the Renegade Blitz. We also talk about the current team, but we also reminisce about the old days of football, and it creates interesting conversations that we want to make sure that you guys have a little bit of fun as well out there. Get some knowledge and have some fun. And guys, so real quick news here. It's been said that Adrian Klemm, the offensive line coach for the Steelers, will be accepting a role as an offensive line coach with the Oregon Ducks in college. He will finish the season out as the Steelers offensive line coach before taking over that role at the University of Oregon. And so now that'll be 3 offensive line coaches in 4 years for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Are you concerned about this? Because it seems that, I don't know, with the zone blocking scheme, at least with the personnel and maybe just in general, whenever you think of how Kansas City's offensive line has looked, maybe the Steelers might go back to the traditional way. There's a lot of people saying, bring back Mike Munchak. I don't think that's going to happen. But do you think it's going to be another promote from within, or are the Steelers finally going to go, just like they did with Munchak, and go outside the organization and grab someone?
It's about time to go outside the organization. I'm tired of this in-house answers. I don't know. The thing is, I don't know any offensive line coaches that are out there right now because, Chris, do you know, because you're the offensive line guru here.
I don't know anybody that's available right now. I mean, things open up, once maybe staffs go away after, if someone gets fired, coaching changes happen. But as far as a free agent or someone that's not out there right now, I don't really know anybody. But Klemm, that was a bad hire by the Steelers. Really, I mean, they I agree with Brandon. They got to stop promoting within. We'll have to see how. We'll have to see if he's one and done also. But Klemm, I mean, he had another year on his contract. Supposedly, Jerry Dulac said that the Steelers didn't plan on firing him. I don't know how true that is. It could be, but why would he leave for Oregon? Like, does he just like the college level better?
I mean, remember, he got thrown out of UCLA. He got thrown out of UCLA for conduct detrimental.
Yeah,
so
the thing is
going to be his first time back in the college ranks since that. And I don't know about you, but now that we've heard about potentially the Chiefs situation with Mike Kafka, potentially, I'm not saying get rid of Matt Canada, but if you want to go explore outside the organization and kind of take a little bit of that magic, especially as they're looking for their next next quarterback. But of course, you also got my boy up in Green Bay, Steel Valley represent, and get that's just me.
If anything, he'll probably be a head coach, Kafka. Heard a lot of rumblings about a head coach. If Triss is the offensive line guru, I'm like the head coach hot seat guru because I look at that every day and look for people. But
I remember Kafka as an Eagles quarterback. What other jobs has he had? I thought he was just like offense QB's coach.
He's a quarterback coach. They've been doing it lately. They've been putting the offensive quarterback coaches to head coaches. Look what the Giants have done.
Yeah,
promoted a special teams coordinator. I'm not against that, but come on. Like,
the Texans did the exact same thing with Cully.
Yeah. So if that has happened.
But I also
you don't need to be a head coach in college. You don't really need to be a head coach in at offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. All you got to do is be around, like a Sean McVay or Andy Reid or Bill Belichick,
or even a Mike.
All you got to do is rub the cloth of them, and you'll get a head coaching job these days. Yeah, and that's why most of these teams are failing.
You got a point because Tomlin, he had one season as a defensive coordinator in Minnesota, then he got the Steelers job. So, and he was behind Brad Childress, who was a part of Andy Reid's coaching tree. So sometimes things do work out like that, but it's more or less a perfect storm, especially with the Steelers job.
You see, that's why I think Tomlin, they need more people like Tomlin as head coaches. I wrote that in my article in the New Pittsburgh Courier.
Did that come out yet?
It has come out yet. It's in stores now.
Is it on the website?
It's in the paper. It's in the paper. Well, the paper has went out.
Let me know if there's a link. I'll post it on it.
You will be when the link comes out. They will be out. But yes.
But as far as Klemm, I want to know if Oregon, because they mentioned this on the post-game show on KDK with Bob Pompiani and Andrew Filipponi, that the Steelers supposedly had like the lowest paying staff for their assistant head coaches. So I was thinking, like, do you think Oregon offered more money to Klemm?
Maybe. Yeah, I'm interested. Has that always been the case, or has that been?
I don't know. That's what they were talking about on there.
I know. Back when they had LeBeau, I don't think that was the case.
Maybe they're coordinators, but maybe like the position coaches.
Again, it's shocking. It's shocking. I mean, granted, the allegations against Klemm kind of had some weight to it, so it was kind of shocking that he kind of ended up in NFL circles. But hey, I mean, if he wants to go back to college, then by all means, let him go. I mean, most Steelers fans are probably wanting the same thing for Matt Canada, but I don't think that's going to happen per se.
Do you know whatever happened? Like, I know there was a lawsuit or whatever, but because he was like not taking concussion serious or something like that at UCLA. Do you know whatever happened? Like, did they settle on it or something like that?
That was the weird thing about all that stuff. In terms of that, I'm currently looking up his coaching career right there.
Mishandling injuries.
Mishandling
injuries. I'm reading it.
But he was the run game coordinator under Jim Mora Jr., former Falcons and Seahawks head coach, and they had one of the top recruiting classes. So there was just so much stuff that was going on. Maybe he's going back to be a recruiter or something like that, but I just don't know. He came back after Munchak got. He was off for 2 years basically because Munchak left for the Broncos, and then he became the assistant O-line coach. So maybe this was just time needed to go back to the college game. He was biting it. Who knows at this point? But
maybe he saw the writing.
Have to make a lot of choices.
Maybe he saw the writing on the wall that it wasn't going to work out. With the state of the offensive line and the players they had. But I don't know. You need more than 1 year to really develop something. And as far as the Klemm tenure, the one and done, I wasn't really too impressed because him coming in as the offense coordinator, there was all this talk about how they're going to fix the run game and how he was going to bring a physical mentality to the offensive line, and none of that has happened. So just they rank 31st right now in rushing offense, and last year they ranked 32nd, dead last in the league. So there's been
who's the offensive line coach last year?
Sean Surratt.
And his contract conveniently expired.
Yeah, and then they promoted Klemm.
Like our colleague says, they just have their contracts conveniently expire. That's how they fire coaches around here. Am I correct?
Same thing with Fichtner, Matt Canada both promoted within. Both don't have much of a resume, or they
no. I told you about that.
It's all in the college ranks, and Canada's tenure so far hasn't been too impressive. They're really struggling to score points overall, and definitely early. So it should be interesting to see what happens after this year.
Yeah, they're going to need to have. Yeah, you can only really promote from within whenever you have those positive hires. You know what I mean? Kind of like how they used to have when Dom Capers became the head coach for Jacksonville and other things like that, and also Wisenhunt, whenever you think of that. Positive hires, sure, hire within because you want to keep that culture. Right now, the Steelers' offensive line culture is out in the toilet, out the window in the toilet, basically. But let's get on to this weekend's game, Steelers versus Chiefs. And guys, this is a very important game for the Steelers in terms of it. We're all charting them as high as 9-7-1. This would be the game for the Steelers to have an upset right now. This is the game that they need, that you would like to see. They get one game usually out of the year where they play absolutely out of their mind for all 60 minutes, and they're going to have to do that against the Chiefs.
Go ahead, make your prediction.
I wanted to see if you were going to say something. I was hoping to follow up there, but I think I just can't see it. I'm basing this on the fact that I think that eventually Hill and Kelsey are going to be back, and that's going to be just a kiss of death for the Steelers. I think they'll do what they always do, which is make a game out of it, because it's going to be with a lot of eyes on them. But I think eventually Kansas City pulls away. I'm going to say 30-17 Chiefs.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough game, obviously going to Arrowhead, and the Chiefs, they have to start fast. If they get off to a slow start, the Chiefs are a fast start team. They're not going to win this game against the Chiefs like last week when they scored 19 points. That's not going to cut it this week against the Chiefs. Yeah, I agree. I think I would have to say that Kelsey and Hill will play in this game. If they don't, those are two big losses for Mahomes. I don't know. The Chiefs probably still could win that game, but it won't be as convincing. I think the Chiefs win this game. And I don't know what the current spread, but the last time I checked was a couple days ago. It was 10 points, which I think is going to be around that mark. So I want to say the Chiefs win 34 to I'll say 34-24. I think the offense will do a little bit better this week. I think they'll get some points, and I think they'll be able to pass the ball against the Chiefs secondary.
Okay. I'm guessing I'm the one that everybody's waiting for. You guys are waiting for the prediction for me to call the upset.
I'm waiting for your scorching take.
Hold on. Huh?
I'm waiting for your scorcher, because this is when you bring it.
My scorcher. It's going to be a competitive game. I think the Steelers have the heart now. It's December. This is the December Steelers that coming out that we haven't seen in the past 2 to 3 years. Resilient, tough, I know you want me to pull the upset, call for a Steelers win, they get big headlines and get Twitter followers, but I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna be practical this time and pick the Kansas City Chiefs to win. I'd say 30-20. Only because if Travis Kelce is playing, guess who he's gonna get matched up against?
Your boy
Bush.
Yeah.
Or Chauvert.
Yeah, that's not a recipe for a success.
I'm gonna agree with our guest though when I say this though. I do think that this is gonna be the Chase Claypool game in terms of he's gonna draw a few pass interferences out there because the Chiefs secondary outside of Honey Badger and when he's on Sorensen, I guess they're really a safety dependent defense as well when it comes to their secondary. Mm-hmm. So I think that Chase will manage to draw a few of those patented pass interference calls, and hopefully he'll be able to bounce back because I think he got benched again.
He did
last week.
I think he's in the doghouse right now.
Chateau with Bow Wow.
Yeah, bow wow wow, yippee yo, yippee hey. Claypool, get your stuff together because you ain't playing. Okay, I'm sorry for that.
But said that he got.
I think it's actually gonna be a Deontay Johnson type game.
Chris, what do you think?
Deontay. I think he's a little bit salty for not making the Pro Bowl. And I think they could. I think he's gonna have a nice little 7 catches, 100 yards, in a tub.
Well, Sam was that Jerry Dulac said that supposedly Claypool got in an argument with a coach or something, and that's why he was sat down in the fourth quarter. But I don't really know what the true thing would happen. But he's definitely rotating with James Washington, though.
I look for him to have. I look to him. I think it's going to be I think they're all going to make an impact because I don't think Freiermuth is going to play. He shouldn't play.
He's two straight practices where he hasn't participated.
No, he shouldn't play. Sit him down. We need him for the next 10 years. We need to get his head right because that's not good.
I hope Claypool comes through with this game because I mean they really need him because I think they're gonna have to keep up with the Chiefs offense because I don't think the Steelers will be able to completely stop that. I mean, last 3 road games the Steelers overall have allowed 118 points, so it's gonna be tough going there at Arrowhead Stadium. But as far as a player that I think is gonna play well, then I would probably agree with Brandon Deontay Johnson. I don't know if the Najee Harris. I don't know if that run game, the offensive line is just not good. So, I mean, there's not many options. Freiermuth is probably not going to play. It's either I hope Claypool steps up, but Johnson's probably your best bet.
Maybe even put a Gentry out there as well because that tight end screen stuff has been working pretty well for him as well. So it's nice to see that he's coming along.
Yeah, I mean, maybe James Washington. He did play a little better there against Tennessee. He did fumble, which was negated, but he still played all pretty well. He scored a touchdown a couple of weeks ago against Minnesota, also. So I think he's been coming on also.
All right, guys. So we're at the end of the podcast here, but I'd be remiss because, of course, it's Christmas, and I want to hear you guys. What's your favorite football-related gift that you've ever got? I'll start off first. In terms of football related gifts, I want to talk about this. It's actually, I was checking my storage room. I found my old my favorite wrapping paper. It was from the 1990s. It had all the teams in the NFL at the time. A wrapping paper, so it was from the 90s. It had the old Denver Broncos logo, so it's from at least 96, 97, and that was really one of my favorites. I was even at that very young age, I was a football fan, but anytime that I seen that wrapping paper, it was like, oh, I know exactly who that gift's for, and just seeing that earlier today really just brought back some good memories.
I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna tell you what. It kind of is. It's a sports-related gift because I got to work for. When I got off from Bill Hartlip, called me emailed me on Christmas Eve to have me work for the Trib as a stringer. So I was doing football games, basketball games. Well, that's a sports-related gift. I don't know about football. You can't say football. That email that he gave me, because I put it in 2-3 months earlier, that Joe Starkey actually put me onto. Shout out to him. So I guess that'll be the best sports-related gift that I got, because I got a job working in sports, which I love, an entry-level job, and it happened to be then. So what do you have, Chris?
Nothing really specific, just the memories that, growing up, the video games, I would probably, like Ty said, Madden, my cousin play video games, throw football in the basement, outside, just those kind of memories. Just growing up, Christmas, football was always a part of it and everything, and just hold on to those memories. And that's really all I got as far as favorite football-related Christmas memory.
I'm Ty Polk. That's Chris Ward. And that's Brandon Walker at the bottom. You've been listening to the Renegade Blitz. Merry Christmas.
Thank you for listening to the Renegade Blitz podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, at @RBlitzPod, and at Blitz Videos. Read articles on renegadeblitz.com. Like us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. The Renegade Blitz podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and wherever else you can listen to podcasts.